Yeah, hello everyone. Irvin Rex here, and welcome back to another video. So yeah, Extra Credits slash History has now released episode 2 of their new Henry Ford series. And yeah, last episode was really entertaining and informational slash educational. Like I said before, I don't know much about Henry Ford, other than the basics, how he revolutionized the car industry, he's American and whatnot. Anyway, let's get to it, shall we? 3, 2, 1, and go. And the episode is called Motor City.
Grosse Pointe Racetrack, October 10th, 1901, 7th lap. Henry Ford is terrified out of his mind. He'd entered his new car into this race to get his name in the newspapers, but not as an obituary. His racer, named Sweepstakes, has a 2-cylinder, 26-horsepower engine clocked at 72 miles an hour with no brakes.
What? Wait, really? Wow. For such an old car, it's got impressive speed.
Also, he's never driven in a race and has never tried to turn the vehicle at high speed. His mechanic crouches on the
For some reason, this reminds me of when I first tried my my first ever super duper scary intense roller coaster in Hong Kong. Man, was I screaming. I mean, like, oh, man, was I screaming. I could barely keep my eyes open. So yeah. While I was on the roller coaster, I felt like my shoes were gonna fall off, and that I'd have to spend the rest of the day, shoeless until we head to a shoe store or whatever. So yeah.
running board, ready for breakdowns. Not to mention the track is a horse racing track, with dirt mounted on the curves to prevent cars from flying off. But every time Ford takes the turn, he feels like he's gonna ram into the fence. His mechanic has to lean out to keep the car from flipping, and noise
Kind of reminds me of whenever I'm learning test driving. Feel like I'm gonna crash or bump a car at any point.
from the grandstand washes over them as they whip past. Their opponent, Alexander Winton, is a seasoned race driver. Hours before, he'd just broken the land speed record. Winton is ahead, but Ford is getting used to the curves and catching up. Then Winton's machine starts bleeding blue smoke. Coming around, 8th lap. Ford punches it on the straightaway and passes Winton, whose car is wreathed with cloud as his mechanic pours oil on the overheating engine. Improbably, Ford crosses the finish line and swears never to race again.
You know, some people say history can't be funny or entertaining. I completely disagree, and I'm sure many of you can too, if you're a fan of history. Also, in regards to this story, I'm really a fan of watching races. Races, doesn't matter. Car racing, motorbike racing, boat racing, jet ski racing, whatever. Whatever, I like watching all of them on TV. And the country I'm most favorite of when it comes to car racing is Italy. They've got some really good race car drivers.
Thanks so much to Factor for keeping us well fed on a busy schedule. By the time Henry Ford won the 1901 sweepstakes, Detroit was well on its way to its nickname of Motor City. Car companies were opening everywhere in Detroit, with the same chaotic boomtown feel as the gold rush or oil strikes in Pennsylvania. And ironically, many of the people involved then are still household names today.
I've obviously heard of Ford. Even I own a Ford SUV, but I've never heard of Dodge or whatever the other company was.
In Detroit, the man to beat was Ransom E. Olds, whose Oldsmobiles were already in production in 1901. And for potential challengers like Ford, one of the best ways to attract attention and investment were publicity stunts, such as winning races, setting speed records, or driving long distances. Actually, Alex Winton, his opponent in that 1901 race, had won backers for his own car company by driving his show model from Cleveland to New York City. Similarly, Ford's race win secured him financial backing by a group of rich Detroiters he'd been cultivating as potential investors for years. And in 1901, those investors helped him form the Henry Ford Company and started working on a production model single-cylinder car. Or rather, they worked on it. Ford was mostly AWOL. See, he wasn't really interested in making single-cylinder runabouts, a term derived from a type of small carriage, to compete with Oldsmobile. Ford was usually elsewhere designing his next race car. After months of arguments with the investors and a new engineer they brought in, he...
For someone who swore to never race again, it really is admirable that he's willing to make a race car, even though he promises to never race again.
voluntarily left the company with a $900 buyout.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final.
This was part of a repeating pattern for Ford, whose resentment for bankers and money men, both air quotes, would only grow. Ooh, there's the foreshadow again. The Henry Ford Company, no longer having Henry Ford, quietly folded and was never heard from again. No, I'm joking. It just renamed itself Cadillac.
Oh, really? That's surprising.
Meanwhile, Ford had enough money to support himself plus an idea for a race car that would build on his reputation as a designer of high-performance vehicles. He partnered with two professional bicycle racers, the closest thing to seasoned race car drivers at the time, to create the ultimate racing machine. Caring not for aesthetics, they stripped every bit of excess weight off it until it was nothing but a massive engine, a pipe frame, and a steering yoke. Because the car was so wild, the driver needed more leverage than a wheel could provide. They built two models, christened Aero and 999, but apart from setting a land speed record in 999 on a frozen lake where it was relatively safe, Ford would not drive either.
Wait, what? Is it really safer to drive? Is it really safer to drive on a frozen lake than it is to drive on land? That part really confuses me. I'm gonna have to check that out on the internet later.
Of these two wild beasts in a race. They'd hire a driver for that. But after a series of technical setbacks, Ford lost confidence in the machines and bailed once again, taking a buyout. This was a smart move in many ways. See, the cars were so associated with Ford that when 999 won another high-profile race and went on to tour the country, Ford still got the credit as a designer. AKA zero responsibility, but all the glory.
Yeah, you have no business ties to the product, but you're still credited with the production of that product / invention. So yeah, either way, even though you are no longer part of the business, you still get a lot of credit and fame.
And it was off the back of that PR victory that Ford met the Detroit coal delivery entrepreneur Alexander Malcolmson, and the two formed a plan to manufacture vehicles. The idea was simple. They wouldn't manufacture a car, they'd assemble it. The parts could come from suppliers who were better at manufacturing the individual components, and the main machinists they relied on were a pair of brothers who Ford worked with briefly at the Henry Ford Company, who had experience supplying Oldsmobile and were, well, a little nuts. They were old-school frontier types, known for saloon brawls and packing revolvers. In fact, once, one brother had an altercation with a bartender that ended with him pointing a gun at the poor guy and making him dance on his own bar top while he smashed up the establishment to the tune of $30,000 of damage.
How is that guy not arrested? Did he get arrested? I don't know. Maybe he'll cover that.
Others were named John and Horace Dodge. On June 16, 1903, Ford, Malcolmson, the Dodge brothers, and several small backers.
For some reason, when I heard the Dodge brothers, I'm immediately reminded of the Wright brothers, you know? Guys who invented the first airplane.
Who'd borrowed money from friends and family, gathered to form the Ford Motor Company. Ford, with his history of bailing on partners, however, would be vice president and not president this time round. Of course, years later, these men would all be millionaires. But that was in no way certain in June 1903. They had a prototype of their new Model A, and were getting orders, but they were assembling it in a rented wooden factory meant for carriage building. They ran into quality problems with suppliers, and money dwindled. Plus, always preferring to work in 3 dimensions, Ford liked to jump from concept drawings to fabricating parts right away, then make adjustments from there, which is a very expensive way to work. When on July 23rd, the first Model A was delivered to a buyer, the company only had $223 in its bank account. Soon, though, money wouldn't be a problem. The 1903 Model A was a roaring success. However, sales did lag behind its rival Oldsmobile model, which sold for $150 cheaper. Ford kept tinkering, replacing the
I should really check out these old cars on the internet to see what they look like. Cause cause I do like modern stuff, but I also really like classic old-timey stuff. You know, like bullet trains are cool and stuff, but I also like those old school locomotives, Really, really classy.
A with a modified Model AC with a redesigned engine. The next year, they followed it with the Model B, which put the engine up front rather than under the driver's seat. And by the end of 1904, Ford had moved its operation to a purpose-built brick plant and was the fourth largest car manufacturer in the nation, though still behind Oldsmobile and Cadillac. Ford began to rely less on suppliers, bringing
If he was the first and the other two were Oldsmobile and Cadillac, then what's the other third? Manufacturing company.
the manufacturing increasingly in-house. But as more and more models of cars claimed their letters of the alphabet, a battle was brewing in the corporate boardroom over the direction of the company. Malcolmson and Ford, who jointly owned a controlling stake, were at odds. Malcolmson won.
I don't know where. Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, let's continue.
Wanted to produce high-end cars, like the enormously profitable Model K with its powerful six-cylinder engine, whereas Ford wanted to capture the mid-range market, with cars like the Model N, and eventually begin moving enough product to bring the price down. The head of the company sided with Ford, and they bought out Malcolmson's shares. Then, in a grim happenstance, a few months later, the company president dropped dead of a heart attack, and Ford took over, his power now absolute. He set aside
In regards to that, there are very, very similar cases like that throughout history, with both politicians and businessmen and whatnot. So yeah, it's small stuff like this that can really change how history goes. So yeah.
had a room with several designers and began to work on a new concept. Ford wanted to create a car for the masses, not one that was as cheap as the $250 runabouts being pumped out by other companies, but a vehicle middle-class families could afford. One that would liberate the American public and end the isolation of the country's rural farmers. A car, in short, that families like his could have bought. It would need to be sturdy, its four-cylinder engine powerful but not overpowering, easy to drive and relatively attractive with a top speed of 42 miles an hour, and crucially, it should be easy to fix. An owner should be able to repair it themselves with no special training.
Yeah, many people think, who don't know that much about history, especially in regards to cars, think that they start the same way as modern cars do. You insert your key, then you turn it and turns on. No, the first ever cars were hand cranked. And despite how it looks, it was not easy, nor was it safe. It was quite dangerous and hard to do. So yeah.
But as he worked with his draftsmen,
when the first non-hand cranked self-starting car produced, it was a success. Except it was deafeningly loud. So yeah.
the factory floor, the employees themselves started working on an experiment. See, Oldsmobile had recently sped up production with a concept known as the moving assembly line. An idea that if you hung an engine, for instance, on a moving track, and had each worker do a specific part of the assembly, you could produce cars more efficiently. Ford loved this concept.
Yep, we're currently studying this in right now in senior high, so yeah.
Tinkering with it himself to fine-tune it. And when his newly designed vehicle, the Model T, first crossed the factory floor in 1908, it would do so on hanging tracks and conveyor belts.
Supports stronger immunity and higher IQ for faster learning. Similac Game School.
And true to Ford's vision, it would change the world. The Model T was enormously popular, and 15 million of them would come off Ford's assembly lines in the next 19 years. They would be used as tractors and firefighting vehicles, as pleasure cars and workhorses of family transportation. but it would also be used for field ambulances. For as 1914 approached, the world was entering a dark period, and Henry Ford would increasingly descend into darkness as well. But there is no way I'm gonna be able to handle telling you that part of the tale next week while my tummy's rumbling like it is. Good thing factor.
Oh, ad time. Anyway, yeah, go check the. If you want to go watch the ads, go check them out yourself. Cause yeah, I'm not a fan of watching ads. Sorry about that. I just had a huge dinner, and yeah, once again, this was really entertaining and educational to watch. A lot of stuff I didn't know, especially the foundation of Cadillac. So yeah, like I said before, people often say history is not fun or entertaining. I beg to differ. Anyway, so yeah, not a lot of stuff for me to say really, because I already gave most of my input. So yeah, if you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe. Check out my Facebook page, link is in the description, as well as the link to the original video by Extra History. Go check them out, they they make amazing content. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!